Hi guys, this is Palace to the Core. My name is Stephen Dawes. Thank you for joining me and thank you for your continued support. Right, we've now got the game against Brighton, which I'm going to be talking about. So if you haven't seen the game yet, do go and check it out because there is a huge amount to unpack in this game. So, if go and check it out, go and hear it or listen to it or however you consume it, and then come back and listen to what I've got to say. So, we had Daichi Kamada in the middle to start off with this game, and we had Jefferson Lerma at the back, which is the situation because Chris Richards is still injured at the moment. But I actually felt this was a little bit of an odd setup because obviously Kamada hasn't had the best of starts at Crystal Palace. He's been a bit hit and miss, mostly miss unfortunately. But I'll get back to how he played a bit later on. But on the cards, this was supposed to be this is a very difficult game. There's a lot riding on this game. There's a lot of emotion tied up in this rivalry that we have, and for such a long time, 90 odd years I think it is, Palace have never beaten Brighton twice in one season. So there was a bit of a record to go for as well in this game, and I have to say it was a fairly even game. I think it started off very well for us with Jean-Philippe Mateta shooting across the goal into the back of the net very early on, about 3 minutes in, and at that point I thought that we were going to be in for a good day. Of course, that's happened a couple of times now where I've said that, but after that I think that was a little bit of a shell shock for Brighton. But after that it became quite, and for most of the game I felt it was quite an even tussle. A lot of it was being fought in the midfield. There was a few forays, shall we say, into the opposing thirds, but most of it was fought out in midfield. We were passing it forward and then it was getting blocked and sent back over and then sent back over to us and things like that. So I felt there were a lot of it was taking place in the midfield and outside of the opposing boxes. Not that we didn't have chances. I mean, we did have chances. Eze had a shot across the goal which was saved, just tipped it wide of the goal. I think that would have otherwise gone in. And a couple of other players had decent chances as well. And same with Brighton. I felt that they also had some decent chances to increase the scoring, which of course they did just before half time. They managed to get the equaliser, which was a bit of a shame. I think that we lost Welbeck. We lost him as a marker, and he was able to head it into 1-1. So it was a bit of a shame for that. But I think that overall, I felt that we played well in that first half, and it was one of those games where it was, there was some hard tackling going on. There was some pushing and shoving going on and things like that. But it wasn't overly physical game. There was a lot of physicality to it, and a couple of times it boiled over, mainly Jefferson Lerma having a go at a few people, but so it did boil over a couple of times, but most of it was actually just hard fought, good game of football. But it was just one of those games where it was just very even. We kind of cancelled each other out quite a lot. I think our passing was a lot better in this game. It wasn't perfect. We did give balls away, but I thought that overall our passing was a lot better. Wharton in the middle looked a lot better. His passing was a lot more accurate in this game than it was previously, so I was pleased to see that. But so in the into half time we went in at 1-1, and I thought that it was probably going to be a bit tighter in the second half because obviously both teams are going to be going for the win, and it wasn't really any different. I think it was more of the same in the second half. It was very, very balanced, very even, fought out in the middle again. I have to say I thought Kamada had probably one of his best games in a Palace shirt. I thought that he wasn't completely without error, but he did play decently well. I thought some of his passing was pretty good. I felt he was getting in with the tackles and he was trying to help win that midfield battle. Obviously, someone like a Hughes in there, it would have been a lot more difficult and probably a lot tougher in the middle. But I thought he had a decent game, to be fair. But let me know down in the comment section what you think about his particular performance. But it was going on for a little while, and then it seemed as though it was going to stay at 1-1, which is something that's happened before many times. But then Daniel Munoz got the ball and hit it across the goal again, another cross goal shot, but it took a big deflection and went into the back of the net, which is a bit of a shame for, but they all count, and to be fair, I don't care how they go in the back of the net as long as they do. So that made it 2-1, and at that point I felt that Brighton tried to kind of up the ante a little bit and tried to make things a little bit more difficult for us. That, well, towards the end of the game is when things started to go wrong, because there'd been a couple of tackles from Eddie Nketiah. He came on for Jean-Philippe Mateta, and the first yellow card that he got was actually for a dive. Now, I think he made a bit of a meal of it. I think it was a bit theatrical, but I think he probably there was contact there, but obviously he made a bit of a meal of it and probably convinced the referee that it wasn't any contact, so he got a yellow card for that. And then later on in the second half, he had studs up against a guy's head, and that was another yellow card, and he was sent off. I can't really complain about the second booking. First one I think was a little bit harsh, but the second one I can't really have any problems with that at all. So he went off, and we were down to 10 men. And so we did a bit of jiggering around, and I felt that we were still holding our own. We were still playing really well. We started to sit a little bit deeper, but I felt that we were still had control of the game. We weren't, under huge pressure from Brighton at that point. But then, of course, we had a second sending off, and this was Mark Gahey. Now, again, in the first half, I think the first half, not the first half, but the first booking that he got, I think was a little bit harsh, because you could see he was actually trying to slow down and stop, but they did collide, and he got a yellow card for us. I think it was a little bit harsh, but anyway. But the second one, I think again was probably was a yellow card. Again, raised studs into the stomach of the Brighton guy, and I think it probably was a yellow card, so he ended up getting sent off as well, which made things even more difficult for us, until later on when Brighton, one of the Brighton players, poleaxed Daichi Kamada, well, knocked him over, shall we say, and then the Brighton player got sent off as well, so that made it a little bit better for us. But for a while, we were down to 9 men against 11, and we were sitting fairly well back at this point. We were kind of all guards on duty, shall we say, and to be fair, I can understand it. We were 9 men trying to battle away against 11 men, so I can understand we were starting to sit back a little bit further and further to try and protect our goal. There was some lovely last ditch defending. Ben Chilwell threw himself in front of a shot just outside the box, which was really good to see. Such determination from him, and I think that's the message of the game, really, was the determination and the desire not to concede another goal. Every player was out there. I think Joel Ward said at one point, people didn't really know what their positions were. They were just all in the fight, trying to stop the goal going in the back of the net. And I think that was a good experience for me. It shows how far we've come under Oliver Glasner, that we can have that camaraderie in the team, and that desire to win, that desire to fight so hard, and it was really good to see. I felt that we were at one point. We were, it looked like they weren't going to score. It just looked like whatever they did wasn't going to happen. But I have to give a mention to Dean Henderson, who made a couple of really good saves first half and second half to deny Brighton. So he played his part as well in this game. And I felt though that I think that in general terms, I felt that we had enough about us to stop that second goal going in. And of course, even though we played something like 12 minutes plus of added time, which Oliver Glasner, you could see, was a little bit unhappy about, and I guess I can understand why he was a little bit unhappy with it. I think there was an injury to Lacroix, and he went off for Joel Ward. It was a head injury, but I don't think that necessarily equated to 12 minutes, and there wasn't a huge amount of stoppage time the rest of the time. So I think it was a little bit over the top, and I think it was one of those things where I don't know if you remember Manchester United. It always used to be the referees letting the game go on until Man United score, and then he's going to call it quits. It was a bit like that. It was almost like he was waiting for Brighton to get a goal, and then they was going to blow the whistle. But anyway, that didn't happen, and we managed to get the 2-1 win. Really impressed with the way that we played in terms of our heart, and our determination. And again, just goes to show you that that the best teams can win under any kind of pressure, and it shows that we did that. So yeah, I was really pleased with the team. I felt everyone played their part. I don't think anyone had a particularly bad game. I think they all did incredibly well, and I think it was good to see that team performance. Now, of course, what kind of energy that's taken out of the team for the next game, I don't know, but hopefully they'll get a bit of a rest and be able to come out next time. We'll be without Eddie Nketiah and Mark Gahey, but I'm sure that we will be able to field a team that is going to be as good, if not quite as good, then certainly as good as the first team that we can put out. But let me know down in the comment section what you think about the game itself, what you think about the decisions that went on as well. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And as always, don't forget to subscribe if you've got this far. I do talk about a lot of Crystal Palace stuff, obviously. And I'll see you next time.